kept waiting for the light to turn green, and it just wasn't turning green. Yes, sir. Can I come down where? Where do you want me? Down here? Oh, the camera. Hi, camera. Thank you. And I want to say again that I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here to speak tonight and this morning to lead singing. Thanks to James, and thanks to James for the invitations to do that. And this is our last opportunity to worship with you. And we're sorry about that, but we're glad to have been here for the month of December. And thank you very much. We wanted to leave you with a gift. So what Connie and I did, we printed up some daily Bible reading schedules. If you'd like to pick one of these up, we put some out here on the counter. Just read a little Old Testament and a little New Testament each day, and by the end of the year, you will have read through the entire Bible. And it's surprising how many people say they have done that. The polls consistently say, one poll says that 20% of Americans have read through the entire Bible at least one time in their lives. Another poll said 7% of Americans have read through the Bible at least one time in their lives. I don't know who's right. I don't really care, but I'll be impressed if you'll do it. So if you'd like to pick up a free Bible reading schedule, cost you nothing. I love free, my favorite price. And if you've done that, by the way, if you have read through the Bible, through the entire Bible, then I'm really, really proud of you. Now, this is true confessions time for you. I have discovered in my life that I have to have a schedule, or what I wind up with is good intentions. So that's not always going to work. So I have really enjoyed using a schedule, and I hope that whether you use a schedule or you have your own plan, I just hope you'll read the Holy Bible, the Scriptures of God. And I want to remind you, this isn't some kind of merit badge that we do this for. We do this because it helps us to grow in devotion to God. That's what this is really about. You know, commitment and devotion are two different things. Commitment says, I will do this thing whether I like it or not. Devotion says, I will do this because I want to please you. And there's a good bit of difference in that. Devotion comes from the heart, you know, the way God described David as a man after my own heart. And we read that David was devoted to God, and all of the subsequent kings then of Israel are measured by that. They either did God's will as David did, or they didn't do. And so that's the verdict on all those kings after that is, did they commit themselves to God, and were they devoted to doing his will as David was? So anyway, I hope you'll do that. I want to take you to Psalm 139 this evening. Psalm 139. And the best way I've found to find Psalms is go to the middle of the Bible. Boom. And that's probably going to put you somewhere in Psalms. It's a big book. 150 Psalms are listed for us there. But we're going to go to 139. And if you know about this, the joke is it's not 119, because Psalm 119 has 176 verses in it, and we'll be here till next Thursday sometime. But actually, we're just going to do Psalm 139, and that coincidentally, because you know it's got to be a coincidence, right? That is in today's scheduled reading on the schedule. So Psalm 139. We're almost through with the entire Bible. We're going to finish this up, though. So let's listen to Psalm 139 and see if we can grow in our own devotion as we listen to David's devotion to God. We start out just with the first 6 verses as David says, God, you know me. You know me. He says, O Lord, you have searched me and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord. You hem me in, behind and before. You've laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. God, you know me. You know what I do, and everywhere I go, and every action that I take is visible to you. And that's not just the big projects. It's all the little stuff, too, the little stuff that we do. God knows all about it all the time. There was an incident in David's life when he was running from Saul. And he's out there in the wilderness with a bunch of, let's tell the truth, they're thugs, okay? He's got a bunch of bandits around him out there. They're running from Saul, and he winds up taking care of a very wealthy man out there named Nabal. And the servants of Nabal came back to their boss, and they said, you know, David and his men were a wall to us. They protected those servants. They protected those flocks. No raiders came and took anything away. And David didn't do that because he wanted those servants to run around and say, oh, what a great guy David is. He did it because it was the right thing to do. We do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And God knows about all of our actions, the big, impressive projects, and also the little day-to-day details that keep us right. And David says, look, you know what I do? You know what I think? You know what I think? That before the word comes out, the thought's formed, you already know all about it. There are some times, have you ever known somebody who just shouldn't play poker? Everything is written on their face all the time. Years and years ago, Connie worked with a woman whose granddaughter, at a tender age, 2, 3 years old, something like, she fell in love with cake. If there was a layer cake or a sheet cake or any kind of cake, she was thrilled with it. She loved cake. And one day, her grandmother took her to a wedding reception, and she saw the wedding cake. She stood there in the doorway and vibrated and just said, you don't have to wonder what she's thinking, okay? She is absolutely thrilled with that thing. Some people are obvious, your thoughts are clear. But even if not, God is the great heart knower. He's called that a couple of times in scriptures, and one is in Acts chapter 1 where Peter prays. They're thinking about another replacement for Judas. He says, Lord, you know everyone's heart. You're the great heart knower. At the dedication of the temple, after Solomon had built the temple that David had conceived in his mind, Solomon pointed out that God's verdict on David was, you did well to have it in your heart. God didn't allow him to build the temple because he was a man of war, but he said, you did well to have it in your heart. God knew what was in David's heart. He knows what we think, he knows what we do, and that is a tremendous comfort. It's a great comfort. To some people, it's terrifying to think that God knows what they think. There's, the guilty plea where no man pursue it. But God knows what we think, and God knows what we do, and God knows our good desires, even when it all falls apart. Have you ever had a really good idea, and you're going to do something that is really the right thing, and it's going to be a blessing to all kinds of people around you, and as soon as you start it, it just blows up and collapses, and nothing works the way you wanted it to. But God knows your heart. And he knows even if it didn't work out right, he knew what you were thinking. It's all there because God hears us probably more as a father than as a judge. You're trying to do the right thing, that's a good thing. So this is really, really important to our prayer life to realize that God knows us. And in this prayer of devotion that David is continuing to pour out in this chapter, he goes on and says, not only do you know me, you're with me. Start with me in verse 7. We're just going to read down through verse 12. It says, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, some versions say Sheol, that's the grave. If I make my bed in Sheol, guess what? You were there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there, your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. You're with me. It doesn't matter where I am, wherever I am in the world, every imaginable location on the planet, God is always going to be with us. God is not a local deity. I'm trying to think how to cut to the chase on this. Connie and I travel a lot. We've been all over the U.S., and we've worshiped with a lot of congregations. And you know what? In every one of those places, God's there. He's not just in Florida, and he's not just in Oklahoma, and he's not just in Vermont, and he's not just in Montana, and he's not just in Utah or Pennsylvania. He is not a local God. That was for idols. They controlled just that little, people thought they just controlled that little portion. God's not like that. He is everywhere, all the time. This is a tremendous blessing and a comfort to us. It was a blessing and comfort to Abraham when he left Ur of the Chaldees and came all the way over to Haran and then ultimately down into Canaan. God was with him all the way he went, because God is undiminished. He doesn't get smaller, less powerful. There were times when David was running from his enemies. That didn't mean that God wasn't with him. God was with him. You remember in that last battle that the Philistines had with Saul? And David was going to join the enemy and go to war against Saul, and God intervened and stopped that from happening in order to guide and protect David. Because David was going to be the next king, and he couldn't be the enemy of the Israelites and their king also. So God was always with him, and that also is a tremendous comfort to us. He's never going to lose us. We're never going to slip through his fingers somehow. I don't know if you remember at the end of Matthew, Jesus is ascending back to the Father, and he says, go and make disciples of all nations. And then he tells them how to do it. Baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them to observe everything that I have commanded you. And then he says one more thing. And I will be with you always to the very end of the age. I will be with you. That is one of the most comforting passages, one of the most comforting things that God could ever say to us. I will be with you. God said that over and over and over. He said it to Abraham. He said it to Moses. He said it to David. He said it to Jeremiah. He said it to multiple characters. He said it to Jacob. He said it to Paul when Paul was isolated there in Corinth, and that mission trip looked like a total disaster. And God said, I am with you. And here's the thing. Every single time in the Bible that God says, I am with you, everything turned out fine. It all turns out fine. God is with us, and he's told us, I will be with you. One of the last things Jesus said before ascending to the Father, I will be with you forever. I will be with you. So it's already true that he is with us. He's with us all the time. Very important in our prayer lives to remember that God is with us. He's with us all the time. And it's not wrong for us to say, God, be with so-and-so, be with me, be with this situation. Even though he said he's going to do that, we can still pray that. Connie has been reading a book by a guy named Gary Millar about prayer. It's a long story, but she's reading this book, and once in a while she'll come to a passage that is kind of arresting. So she'll stop and say, listen to this, and she reads it to me. And just yesterday or the day before, she caught me with a passage where Millar is talking about prayer in the Bible, and his take on it is that in the Bible, prayer is asking God to do what he's already promised to do. We're asking him to do what he has already promised that he will do. So it's not wrong to say, be with me, be with my friends, be with someone who's suffering in some situation. He's already promised to do that. So we're asking him to get involved and do the thing that he had promised to do. He is everywhere all the time to guide us. His steadfast loyalty and his presence inspires our devotion to him. He's never going to abandon us. Never going to abandon us. After all, he's the one who gave us life. And that's what David says. You gave me life. Look, you know me. You're with me. You gave me life. Let's go back to Psalm 139, start in verse 13. You gave me life. He says, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I'm still with you. You gave me life. This amazing and intricate wonder that we inhabit. We are just delighted by the body's systems. There's so much going on within us that's really fascinating. There's a guy who's big in apologetics. He's a biochemist named Dr. Fazali Rana. Sounds like a disease, but it's not. It's a real guy, Fazali Rana. And he's written a book called The Cell's Design. Now, the cell is the smallest living part of us. And he says that it is obvious to anyone who understands the intricacies of the cell that it is impossible for it to come about except as a self-contained unit immediately. It can't be partially there. There's no way it can exist except by a creator who put it together from the very beginning. The cell's design is an amazing, intricate machine. It is just, it's just astonishing to think about it. And the more we know, the more impressed we are. And if that weren't enough, God not only made this animate physical life, he gave us a spirit too. We are incredibly made. We are absolutely amazingly made. And apparently, God fixes our lifespan. He didn't tell us what it is, but he has determined our end from the beginning. We know that that is a description of God. He knows the end from the beginning. And apparently, he has fixed our lifespan for us. And the thing to remember is it's not fate. The ancient pagans believed there was a fate that controlled everything. You couldn't deviate because fate had already determined what was going to happen to you, when, where, and how. And David very accurately says, no, it's not fate, it's God. God's the one who is in charge of all of this. And that means that you can appeal to God, even though your days are set. He knows how long you're going to live. But you know what? You can appeal to him and he can change that. Things can be different. There was a king named Hezekiah who was going to die. A prophet was sent to him and say, you put your house in order, this is it, you're done. You know, everybody out of the pool, it's all over. And Hezekiah, the story that I like to make fun of because I haven't been in that situation, but Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and wept. He cried over it and begged God to have mercy on him. And God gave him 15 more years of life. Now, it was over. You know, God had already determined, Hezekiah, you're done. No, God gave him 15 more years of life because he asked. And yet still, God is the one who's in charge of all of that. That is a tremendous comfort to us because we will never, ever be able to match God's thoughts. We are never going to understand everything that he is doing. PhD was asked one time, who is the greatest scientist who ever lived? And he answered the question and said, if you asked who the second greatest scientist was, that'd be a hard question to answer. He says, in reality, there was only one, head and shoulders above all the other scientists who have ever lived. It's Isaac Newton. He said his theories were so strange, so unusual, and so far ahead of everyone else that the mathematics of the day wouldn't even describe it. And so he had to invent a whole new branch of mathematics that we now call calculus so that he could explain his theories. So he couldn't even explain it in language that people could understand. He had to invent this whole mathematical system. Isaac Newton. Late in Isaac Newton's life, someone asked him about some of his accomplishments, and he said, I don't know what I may seem to be to others, but to myself, he said, I seem to be like a little child at the seashore, amusing himself with a shinier pebble or a larger shell than the others, while before me the vast ocean of truth lay all undiscovered. The smarter we get, the more ignorant we realize we are. There is so much more out there in God's mind. Our minds can never match God's thoughts. But I want to leave you thinking about this. Not finished. Don't get excited, okay? But I want to leave you thinking about this. Did God give you life? You don't have to answer that out loud. Did God give you life? Now, let me ask you this. If most of us, I think, would say, yes, God gave me life. Okay, that's what David said. If God gave you life, do you think he could do it again? Because you see, he's promised us eternal life. You think he could do it again? I'm pretty sure he could do it again. If he can do it once, I think he can do it more than once. I think he could do it again. So as David demonstrates his devotion to God, he somewhat explains to us the reasons why he has that devotion, what has captivated him about God. First thing, God knows me. Second thing is, God's with me all the time. And the third thing is, he gave me life and everything that I am. He gave that to me. And because he's so completely devoted to God, he finishes the psalm with two last thoughts. And we're just going to race through verses 19 to 24 and just point out these two thoughts. If only you would slay the wicked, O God. Away from me, you bloodthirsty men. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord, and abhor those who rise up against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. So really and truly, he's just got two final thoughts in this psalm. The first one is this: your enemies are my enemies. It really is not ungodly for us to hate what God hates. He says, your enemies are my enemies. Second thing he says is, your will is my will. I will do anything that you want me to do, even if it means changing myself. I'll do whatever I have to do because I'm completely devoted to you. See, that's what devotion looks like. I will do anything you want me to do because I want to please you. Years ago in Chicago, and I was like 93, 94, something like that. Terrible house fire. It was in a bad neighborhood where they have bars on all the windows and doors, and a mother and her 6 children were trapped inside this burning house. And the fire department got there. Before they could get the fire put out, everyone in the house died of smoke inhalation. And in the aftermath, the fire captain was talking to the media, and he said, you know, she could have gotten out. That mother could have gotten out of the house, saved her life, and probably saved 3 or maybe even 4 of the children with her. She couldn't decide which ones to leave. So she stayed and died with them. That's devotion. That's the kind of devotion that God has to us. He'll die with us. The question is, will our devotion cause us to live with Him? We're the only ones who can answer that. And we have to answer that each day. We're going to sing an invitation song. I don't know your situation. I hope you have obeyed the gospel and you've done everything that you're supposed to do. Jesus says you have to believe in Him. That's John 3:16, probably the most famous verse in the entire Bible. You see it at all the football games, right? John 3:16. You have to believe in Jesus. You have to confess His name before men. Jesus said you have to do that in Matthew 10:32 and 33. Jesus said we have to repent. That's more than feeling bad. That means stop doing the wrong thing, start doing the right thing in its place. That's Luke 13:3. And Jesus said we have to be baptized. That's immersion in water for the forgiveness of our sins, to be raised, to walk in newness of life with Him. A lot of explanation about that later on in the New Testament. The point is, this is what Jesus has called us to do. He's with us. He understands us. He knows us. He'll die with us if we will live with Him. We're going to sing a song and give you an opportunity to respond to Jesus' invitation. If you have obeyed the gospel in the past, but you really haven't lived with Him or lived for Him, you need to come back and devote yourself to Him. If there's anything that you need to do that we can help you with, we are eager to help while we stand together. Sing the invitation song.
Lord will find a way.